first memory. The journey to the old village. It was a breezy autumn day, with fallen leaves adorning the cobblestone paths in shades of yellow and orange. My university friends insisted on planning a weekend getaway, and this time I couldn't refuse. We rarely got together since we all lived in different cities. This made every reunion special. Our plan was simple: a few hours of driving to an old secluded village surrounded by dense forest. The village was said to be untouched by time, where people lived by old traditions, and even electricity was scarce. As we began our journey, the sky turned slightly grey, but didn't seem like it would rain. The car was filled with laughter as the four of us, Serhat, Elif, Zeynep, and I, shared stories and jokes. Serhat, the group's natural leader, kept the mood lively with his chatter. Elif, the quiet observer, often surprised us with her sharp insights. And Zeynep, the adventurous one, was always up for something new. After 2 hours, we were far from the city's hustle and bustle. The road narrowed, surrounded by towering trees, until it became a mere dirt path. GPS was no longer working, but Serhat had brought a physical map, something none of us thought people still used. To our surprise, it proved invaluable. When we finally reached the village, it felt like stepping back in time. The houses were made of stone and wood, their roofs moss-covered. Elderly villagers sat at their doorsteps, watching us curiously. Children played with handmade toys, their laughter echoing through the dusty streets. The house we were staying in was at the edge of the village, near a hill. It had a spacious garden with an old swing, a well, and overgrown wildflowers. Inside, the house was enchanting. Wooden floors creaked underfoot, stone walls carried an air of mystery, and the furniture looked antique. A large fireplace and a small library stood out, making the house feel like a portal to another era. At dinner in the village square, an elderly woman served us warm bread and cheese, along with jars of homemade pickles. As we ate, a villager approached us and asked, "Are you staying in that house?" "Yes. Why?" I replied with a polite smile. The man hesitated before saying, "That house has quite a story. Its former residents, let's just say their history is peculiar." He walked away, leaving us puzzled and intrigued. Second memory, the midnight mystery. That night, we gathered in the house's garden under a sky glittering with stars. The absence of city lights made the stars appear closer and brighter. As we prepared to sleep, Zeynep said, "I can't rest without knowing more about the story of this house." We huddled by the fireplace, and Zeynep shared what little she had overheard from the villager. Apparently, the previous owners had left the village under mysterious circumstances. The details were vague, but the hint of secrecy made it all the more fascinating. As the fire dwindled, a soft creaking sound came from upstairs. We initially dismissed it as the wind, but the sound continued, steady and deliberate. Serhat, always the brave one, grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate. We followed him upstairs, walking cautiously as the wooden stairs groaned under our weight. There were 3 rooms in the corridor. "It's coming from the left," Elif whispered. Zeynep, standing slightly behind, muttered, "Maybe we shouldn't be here," but Serhat was already opening the door. The "What's this?" he asked, lifting the box. Zeynep hesitated before suggesting, "Should we open it? It might belong to the house's former residents." Curiosity got the better of us. We carried the box downstairs and opened it near the fireplace. Inside we found old letters, black and white photos, and a leather journal. The letters were mostly illegible, but the journal seemed to belong to a woman who lived in the house decades ago. The entries began with mundane details about life in the village, but gradually took a darker turn. One night, the woman wrote about seeing someone watching her from the garden. When she went outside, there was no one there, only footprints in the soil. Another entry described finding a peculiar medallion near the well. After discovering it, she began having strange dreams about a child crying near a well. As we read, the fire crackled loudly, startling us. Serhat dismissed it as the wood settling, but a sense of unease lingered. Suddenly, Elif noticed movement in the garden. Looking out the window, we saw a shadow heading toward the well. Third memory, the medallion's return. We rushed outside, hearts pounding. The garden was bathed in moonlight, with a faint mist hanging in the air. By the time we reached the well, the shadow was gone, but on the ground near the well lay an old medallion, just as described in the journal. Zeynep picked it up, her voice trembling. "Do you think this is the one she wrote about?" The medallion was engraved with an unfamiliar symbol. We decided to put the medallion back where it belonged. Serhat dug a small hole near the well, and Zeynep carefully placed the medallion inside. As we covered it with soil, a strange sense of relief washed over us, as if we had restored balance. The next morning, as we prepared to leave, the elderly woman from the previous day approached us again. "Did you sleep well?" she asked with a knowing smile. "Yes, it was a unique experience," I replied. She nodded, her expression serene. "Every old house has its story. But remember, some stories are meant to stay where they belong." Driving back to the city, none of us spoke much. The events of the night lingered in our minds, leaving behind a mix of wonder and unease.